Welcome to today's webinar, Hiring and Retention Tips in a Tight Labor Market, How Small Businesses Can Compete for Talent. And this is brought to you by the NFIB Small Business Legal Center. To our current NFIB members, thank you so much for being an active participant in the small business conversation and for your continued support. To those who are not yet members, welcome and consider joining the nearly 300,000 small business owners who are fighting for small business with NFIB. Our success is based on strength in numbers. Each new NFIB member makes our voice a little louder and strengthens our efforts to fight anti-small business legislation. If you are or know a small business owner who needs their voice to be heard, visit NFIB.com or call 1-800-NFIB now. Before we begin, here are a few announcements and reminders. If you have any issues with audio, please ensure your computer speakers are set up properly and know that your internet connection does affect the clarity of sound. We are recording today's presentation, and after each webinar, all registrants will receive an email with a link to the recorded webinar and link to download the slides. We encourage you to enter questions in the Q&A box on the right of your screen. Just click Ask a Question and type your inquiry. We will address questions at the end of the program. And while we typically get many questions during the webinars, even if we don't get to your particular one, we hope we will answer one that will be helpful to you. And today our speaker is our very own Beth Melito, Vice President and Executive Director of the NFIB Small Business Legal Center. I'll hand things over to her. Thanks so much, Beth.
Thanks, Casey, and thanks everyone who is joining us live on the webinar. And thank you also if you are listening to the on-demand recorded version. Before I jump into today's topic, I want to highlight next month's webinar. This will be on Wednesday, October 1. I am very excited that Tim Coons, an attorney from Phoenix, Arizona, and founding partner of Counsel, is going to come back and join us again. Tim was with us earlier this year. He's going to come back for a live interactive Ask the Small Business Attorney. Tim's practice focuses on small businesses. Those are most of his clients. He is an expert in HR, employment law, intellectual property, contracts, litigation, and collections. So all great topics for small business. And I hope you will join us on October 1st. Registration will open the week before, and you will be able to submit questions in advance. But we are hoping that this will be a very interactive session with questions throughout. So Tim's not planning to come in with a scripted PowerPoint, but wants to hear from you and answer your questions live. So that should be a great presentation in October. So today we're going to be talking about hiring, retention, recruitment, all those good things and things that NFIB, I think, knows a lot about. What I'm going to share today is sort of a compilation of what I hear from members. NFIB's Small Business Legal Center runs a support line. And as a result of the support line, we talk to or hear from probably close to 150 members, small business owners or managers every month too. I get to hear a lot about what is going on out throughout the country in every industry, because NFIB represents about 300,000 small businesses nationwide, and we have members in every industry. So it's a great opportunity for me to hear sort of best practices and challenges too. In addition to my interaction with small business owners, we have some great data on what is going on in the labor markets too from the NFIB Research Center and our monthly Small Business Economic Trends Survey. So I want to share start a little bit with the data from the NFIB SBET July survey, which showed that 33% of all owners reported job openings. So 1/3 of NFIB members reported they had job openings they could not fill in the current labor market. This was down a little bit from June. However, it's still well above the monthly historical average, and we've been doing SBET for over 50 years now, and it's still well above the monthly historical average of 25%. So 1/3 of NFIB members said they had job openings they could not fill. The difficulty in filling open positions is particularly acute in construction, wholesale, and transportation industries. We also have a lot of NFIB members who are in the automotive industry, auto repair shops, and I've received a few questions in advance from business owners in those industries. So another area where I know it can be difficult to fill open positions. Over half of small businesses in the construction industry, 55%, said they had a job opening they couldn't fill. And 29% of owners reported few qualified applicants for their open positions. So that is also a problem there. The cost per hire landscape has also not good for business owners there. It has gone up. In 2025, the cost per hire was about $1,200. And that's based on training, sort of lost work time. You might have a gap between when somebody leaves and before you get the replacement in there. So all that goes into that cost per hire. And the time to fill is also taking longer too. Before COVID, it was about 16 days. It is now taking about a month and a half on average to fill. And this is again across all industries, across the country, nationwide, but it's now taking about a month and a half. The other issue, of course, is our unemployment. This is sort of good news, but bad news for those with job openings. Unemployment remains low at 4.2%. We still have more of the baby boomer generation retiring every year. Job mobility is increasing, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too, but you probably have seen that in your business. I just heard on an HR podcast that I listened to that Gen Z, and those are roughly individuals born between 1997 and 2012, and so they are in the workforce now. Gen Z employees are averaging 2 years or less in their jobs. So their job mobility is definitely increasing. People are willing to hop to what they perceive as a better opportunity or move elsewhere. And we do, of course, have low birth rates. Births in the United States have declined over the last 50 years, and this has happened in every age group, every demographic there. So we just don't have as many replacement workers coming in. So the job market's tight, and you've got to compete with others in your industry. So here we are, the employees on the move here. According to a Gallup survey from last year, self-reported employee turnover risk is at its highest point since 2015. This Gallup survey found that half of U.S. employees, 51%, are watching or actively seeking a new job. So they may be watching, just sort of, they get if they're on LinkedIn, they get the LinkedIn and they do look at those. You might be good for this opportunity there. So they will click open those and take a look at those. That can be considered in the watching category there. So they're not necessarily actively seeking a new job because they're employed and their job is, it's good, it's fine, but they're watching. They're looking at those LinkedIn emails that they get. And, they'd be open to another opportunity if it sort of fell in their lap, so to speak. This is an continuing upward trend there. Employees' long-term commitment to their companies is currently at the lowest it has been in over a decade there. Another statistic from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, so the U.S. government there in January reported the median tenure for all workers was 3.9 years. So Gen Z, 2 years or less, but all workers, the median tenure is just 4.2 years. And for women, it's even lower. It's 3.6 years. So that is been declining and continues to go down. Employees' tenure does vary significantly by age. Older workers do tend to have longer tenures than younger workers. And it differs somewhat by sector and industry there too. But overall, across the country, all industries, if you figure out, the median tenure is just 4.2 years. So that current economy means that employees have job options. And while, the unemployment rate has gone up a little bit and maybe the economy is tightening up a bit, as our survey also shows, employees are open to options. There are options out there, and they're not hesitant to leave their current position for jobs that they perceive as a better fit. And this is from the BLS report that I just mentioned there. So you can see there, it does, the tenure of employees, workers in the country does vary based on age there. But in the mid-range there, it is low, 2.8 and 4.7. So the cost of losing an employee, the turnover cost, this is pretty significant and certainly something you're aware of too. I mean, it's the time, as I said before, it's about a month and a half now to replace an employee. The money to find the replacement, if there is, staff time that's spent posting jobs, interviewing candidates, all that takes time. And then the training too, to train the replacement when they come in. They're not, to get them up to speed. They're not going to be, making as much, doing as much as somebody who's been on the job for a while. And especially if there's a vacancy too, there's obviously stress and strain on everyone else in the business, particularly if it's a small business too, where people are sort of filling in or backfilling in while you look for the replacement. The average cost of turnover is about 11.5% of the employee's annual salary, so about $2,300. So how do you win the race for talent, win the race for the best employees, and don't have those job openings go beyond the month and a half average there? You want to get that down. You always want to have a way, sort of a pool, if you will, that you can pull from, or candidates that are willing to, open that email from you or consider coming to you, even if they're not actively looking for a job, but they are open to employment elsewhere. And that's where most workers, again, 51% of employees say they would be open to employment elsewhere. Like they like their job, but yeah, sure, I'd be open to going elsewhere. So the 4 strategies I'm going to run through today are being proactive, being engaged, being creative, and being flexible. So the first is being proactive. And I mentioned before too that 59% of job seekers, 59% of job seekers here research their companies. So they will see a job opening, whether it's a LinkedIn announcement, something on Indeed, a posting on Indeed. And before they do anything, what is the first thing job seekers do? They Google you. They Google your business, they Google your company. They take a look. Is this something I want to pursue? Is this worth my time? Is this going to be better than where I am now? And again, remember that unemployment rate is pretty low. So most of the individuals out there who you're targeting are probably employed. So they're already in a job. So they're not necessarily actively seeking. So what is it that you can do to make your business, your company stand out? And it's all about marketing. It's about thinking, being proactive, and putting the best light on your business, shining the light on your business, if you will, publicly, even if you don't have a job opening. I mean, of course, this will help with customers too, with getting new customers and attracting new customers, but it's all about building brand awareness for your business, your company, so that people think, oh, gee, yeah, I've heard of that salon, or I've seen that salon pop up on my Instagram feed, or yeah, my neighbor goes to that salon, I've heard about it. And yeah, they have those cool Instagram videos. And yeah, that seems like it would be a fun place to work. So it's all about marketing your business, even if you don't have a job opening. So thinking outside the box here. The workplace you create for your employees, it should be positive, right? Safe and engaging. And you need to always have your finger on the pulse of what's changing. So you can make adjustments, be proactive, change things up, if you will. What you did before might not be working particularly when it comes to search strategies there too. In the past, for many employers, the bulk of their recruiting strategy revolved around posting on job boards. And, let's think about that for a second, like Indeed there. Who's on job boards? Mainly people who are actively looking for a new job, actively looking, not just, oh, I'd be open to a new job, but people who are actively looking for a job. So that means the bulk of the recruiting efforts are missing out on about, and depending on your industry, anywhere between 80 to 95% of the potential pool of candidates, because many of those candidates, many of those potential applicants who would be a good fit in your business are already employed. So they are not necessarily on Indeed actively looking for a job. So again, you need to figure out a way to get in front of those applicants and candidates who are not necessarily actively looking for jobs. These are passive candidates, people who are not going to be on Indeed, but like 53% of employees out there, hey, they'd be open to switching jobs if it seemed like a fun place to work, maybe pays a little more, benefits might be a little different, shorter commute, has flex hours. I'll get into all these things that, we hear candidates are looking for now. So it doesn't necessarily need to be all those things. You just never know what necessarily is going to get an applicant's interest there, but you need to think about ways that you can get in front of those passive candidates, the individuals who are not actively looking for a new job. And that does take more time and more creativity, but you can do it, sort of ongoing, because again, that could also be a way to get in front of new customers and just build, brand awareness in your community, in your town, so that you're on the top of mind of candidates when they do look or think about making a switch. So sharing pictures, sharing videos on Instagram, Facebook. I mean, it is important, I think, to have a posting on Indeed if that's your thing too. And then also word of mouth. So I'm sort of covering the fourth bullet there right now too with the search strategies. Word of mouth from existing employees is also very important. And you probably all know that too. A lot of hires are not necessarily internal hires, but they're referrals from current employees or current customers there. So getting the word out to your customers, to your employees, if there is an opening, or if you know that there is going to be an opening, you're going to be expanding, getting ready for that, being proactive, and letting, casting the net widely as you can. Highlighting when you can. Again, if you do Instagram videos or you're on Facebook there, highlighting unique perks. What is it that, makes your restaurant, your shop, your business different? What is it you're doing? Showcase your employees. This is where if you have an Employee of the Month program and you're on Facebook, showcase them with the employee's permission, obviously there, but showcase them. Let the community know what it is, who works for you and what you do to support your employees. I mentioned already getting your current employees involved in the search for talent there. And one thing I've mentioned I know on a slide on the end too, is this is where referral bonuses can be helpful too. So you incentivize getting your current employees involved in this search for talent there. And it doesn't need to be a full-blown employee referral program. One of the members I talked with last year had a great tip where he fills, a bowl with just like $5 Starbucks gift cards. And if an employee posts when they have job openings, I think it was in a restaurant, it was a restaurant owner there, when they have job openings, if an employee is willing to share the opening on their Facebook page or their Instagram page, they get to pull out a gift card from the fishbowl in the back there too. They just show it too. So similar to the way some stores, will incentivize, Yelp postings there. So something like that too, to get your employees involved in, sharing that you've got an opening and this is a fun place to come and work. New benefits, I'll talk a little bit more about there, thinking about ways that you can change things up, what's working, what's not. Company branding, making sure that you're on brand, you've got a cohesive branding strategy, and it doesn't, this doesn't need to be high dollar hiring a marketing firm, but can just be, fix up your web page too, because remember what I said before, the first thing a candidate's going to do when they see that there is an opening or they're considering an opening, if they're a passive candidate, they're going to probably Google your company or your business. Do you have a web page? Maybe you don't need one. Not all NFIB members have a web page, but if you do have one, what does it look like? Because that is the first sort of insight that a candidate and applicant will have into your business too. And again, you want it to be positive experience too. So what does your website look like? If you have a Facebook page, if you have an Instagram, what do they look like? What is somebody going to see when they go to that? So retention does start with hiring, and you want to make sure that you are hiring somebody who is a good fit. And I have the apples there because of course we don't want to have, a bad rotten apple in there, but it isn't necessarily always a rotten apple there. But you do want to make sure that whoever you hire at the end of the day is a good fit. So hire slow, and then we'll get to a little bit on termination at the end there. But hiring slow, not too slow, because that's something else that I know is an annoyance and a big complaint that you see on Glassdoor about hiring process there. But you don't want to speed it up and just necessarily have, unless you're, really, really kind of desperate, somebody necessarily walk in and you get them, out on the floor that day there too. You do want to be a little bit of thoughtful about it too, because you want to make sure it's, it's like dating. You want to make sure it's a good fit on both sides there. So transparency is very important when hiring. Give applicants the essential information about your business before they apply. So this is where, if there is a job, advertisement you have on Indeed, or if it's a link on your website there, if you have a job section, a career section on your website there, share essential information, not all the information, but essential information about your company and about the job, what the requirements are. In many states now, you are required to give a salary range, not necessarily the salary, but the sort of the range of the salary for the position that you're hiring for. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing there, because you don't want to get too far along in the hiring, interviewing process there and to find out it's a mismatch. Somebody is just not willing or able to come and work for your company for the salary or wage that you are offering for it. So I don't think transparency in salary and wage is necessarily a bad thing, because it can save you and the candidate a lot of time there. Again, candidates who are only passively looking for a job are not going to put in the time and effort to apply and interview for a job just to find out it's not a good fit for them. So they want to be confident before they go through the process of filling out an online application or coming for an interview that this seems like a good thing. So again, making that information available online for them, usually somewhere in a posting, in a video, whatever it may be, on the careers page on your website, can be very helpful there. A standardized process is very important when it comes down to accepting applications, if you have a written application there, and then also interviewing candidates, to have a defined process, a written process, so that if you are interviewing and meeting with multiple people for the same position, you are asking the candidates basically the same questions. I mean, you might, outgrowth of a question will lead to, another discussion there too, but at least have an outline of the standardized questions that you were asking all the same candidates for a particular position there. And sell your business. I mean, be positive in the interview. Talk about what's great about, why would you want to come work for you? Think about that. And of course, if you wouldn't want to come work for you, then you've got some work to do. But why would you want to come work for you? Why would you want to come work for this business, this company? Think about that. And then in the interview, you're going to be selling your business. Be positive. What is it that's great about this place there? And one good tip is to have the candidate or applicant, if possible, meet with other individuals in the company. This can be really a great way to market the job, and also maybe screen out individuals who are not necessarily going to be a good fit for the job too. So I think it's always good to have, if at all possible, more than one person, at least two in the business, talk with the individual. It can be very helpful to make sure that you're getting the right fit in there. So it's not just about, do they have the skills for the job? But do they have the right personality for the job? What is it you're looking for? Is it just somebody who can fill out tax forms, or is it somebody who can also take feedback and constructive criticism? And, if it's a customer forward-facing position, do they have experience, customer service experience? Have they, dealt with customers before in a public way? Are they used to being on the phone? I mean, this is a big one too. You may have an individual come in, especially in this age of texting and emailing, individuals who are not as comfortable talking on the phone. And if the job involves a lot of talking on the phone, you want to make sure that this is, a person who would be up for that. So again, this is where having the candidate meet with others in the company too, and then maybe also checking references. I know that this can be sort of a hit or miss as to whether or not, the former employer is going to be candid or share much, but it can be helpful too, especially if it's just checking even a skill set too. So if somebody says, yes, I did tons of customer service, I was on the phone 50% of my time. If you're able to talk to their former or current employer and find out they're never on the phone, they sit at a computer all day and they really are very rarely on the phone. I mean, that might be a reason to, give a second thought to that candidate there too, and then review all the information. Finally, are you following up with the candidates in a timely manner? Closing the loop on those that you've rejected. Communication is critical. I mean, you'll see this on Glassdoor, the reviews, and Glassdoor reviews, there are reviews out there for large companies and small companies. You might be surprised if you haven't Googled to see if your business is on Glassdoor and what's been written about it. You definitely should do that. I know NFIB does it regularly, and we pride ourselves on our positive Glassdoor reviews. And that's a testament to sort of monitoring what's said out there. A negative review, and there are a lot of times reviews about the job application process. So it was slow or very complicated. I was pulled in for 5 interviews, and I had to take, 3 days off from work, and they didn't reimburse my travel. I mean, things like that too. Think about it from the perspective of the applicant. Are there things that we could do to make this a more positive experience for the applicant? Because if it's so complicated and so cumbersome and timely, you get to a point where the applicant's going to think, why would I want to come work for this place? Poor follow-up, then close the loop. I mean, if you've decided this is not the person, make sure there's somebody that is closing the loop with the applicant there. And then if there is a negative review somewhere, see if you can, investigate feedback, acknowledge the concern, and internally outline and meet with others, take steps to make sure that the hiring experience is improved for future applicants. If it's broken, what can you do to fix it? Personalizing the onboarding. This is really, so you've made the offer, you've interviewed, you've made the offer, they've accepted, yay. This next part is very, very important to make sure that the new employee feels engaged with your business, not from day one, but from really acceptance of the offer. From that point on, the onboarding, or what I've referred to sort of as pre-boarding, should be taking place. So you don't want to have a situation where you make an offer, they accept, and then there's silence, and it's like, okay, and you're going to start in 3 weeks, and then there's radio silence, and they don't hear from you until the day before they're supposed to start. And I think there's kind of like, oh, gee, I wonder if this is still happening. There's angst out there. I mean, I've heard this from individuals. You all probably have too. And that's just kind of a weird situation to go into. So communicate with the new employee before day one. Best practices now are to try to work through as much of the paperwork as possible if you can before day one. So say they're starting, September 15th. So before then, reach out to them, any paperwork, tax forms, get them ready to complete the Form I-9 on day one. So make sure they have the individual, the identification maybe that they need to bring to complete the Form I-9. Reach out, and either you or assign a pre-start contact who will reach out to the candidate, whether it's the manager or another employee, or maybe it's somebody in HR there. The contact person can make themselves available to answer any pre-start questions. Maybe the individual doesn't necessarily want to set up a phone call, but at least knowing that they have a contact and a phone number and somebody they can text with questions, I think is very helpful too. Letting them know, what should I wear? Because maybe they came in for an interview and that's the only time they've been in your business, and they might have been a little bit more dressed up then and might have observed, gee, everyone seems very casual. Is that okay for me to go? What exactly do I wear there? What should I do for lunch on day one? And you'll see in bullet number 3 there, pro tip, don't let new employees eat lunch alone on day one. Very, very bad practice there. So in that pre-start contact, let them know on day one, you're going to be going out to lunch with do you have any, food issues, food allergies, if they're, if you're planning on 5 guys on day one, it would not be very good then to find out that your new employee is a vegan. So, again, take that into account, maybe something to discuss in the pre-start contact there too. So lunch day one, we were thinking about, or we usually order 5 guys. Would that work for you, or is there somewhere else you'd like us to order from, or we're going to go out, whatever it might be. Letting them know the work hours. What time are they expected on day one? When should they be there? What should they wear? And some companies too, and this is a nice thing to do, is we'll share the email address for the new employee. This is if they're going to have a dedicated email address. This will be your email address, and won't be active until whatever time, but just so you know, this will be your email address there. And then think through too, what's the work area look like? Is the workstation all set up? Is their computer set up? Are they going to be able to log on? Just logistic things like that really can cause a lot of angst for employees if they're just sort of dropped off at a cubicle and there's a sheet there with their login, and that's kind of it there too. So what can you do to really personalize the onboarding and have somebody to greet them the first day at the set time, show them around, show them their workstation, make sure that they're able to log on, make sure that they have something to do, check in with them throughout the day or throughout the first week. All of these sort of personal touches to make it a nice experience and to welcome them to your company. It's also nice, if possible, too, to have a quick meeting to introduce the new team member, and then assigning one employee as not their mentor, or at least their point of contact too. So if the employee has questions like, gee, this code you gave me for the restroom doesn't seem to be working, they know that they can go to this person there and ask them. There's no dumb question for their mentor or main point of contact there. Conducting 30 or 60 or even 90-day touch points 3 is also a very good practice there. Asking them questions. Are you happy? Anything we can do differently? Anything you don't understand? Do you not have enough work? I mean, there's nothing worse than, coming in and they're sitting at their cubicle and they've got nothing to do. And the person is going, gee, why did they hire me? Like, nobody's talking to me. I have no work. Or, the flip side is, oh my goodness, there's this stack of assignments here or emails in my inbox, and I don't even know where to start or what to do or what's the priority there. So making sure you're in good communication and contact and a nice sort of a one-on-one sit down at the 30, 60, and maybe even the 90-day touch points too. And it is also nice to conduct the performance review, and definitely an annual pay review. I talked to that a little bit about the end. And then this pro tip here, 35% of employees will look for a new job if they don't receive a raise, even if it's a cost of living adjustment within the first 12 months. So think about that annual review, and even if it's a little bump in pay, can be very important in retaining those employees. Be engaged. Drivers of retention, take an interest in your employees. That's first and foremost. The biggest driver of retention is supervisors. Employees don't leave companies, businesses, they leave supervisors. Half the reasons that employees give in HR surveys all over are related to management, poor management. Money is actually rarely the main reason people leave their job. It might be one of the reasons, but not the main reason. And even when money is a factor, again, it's rarely the only factor. Being the best paid doesn't matter if other things with a job are not good. So the fact that money isn't the top reason most employees leave their jobs is actually a really good thing. And I think a good thing for small businesses where there are often, I know, budget constraints that mean you can't necessarily boost compensation plans as compared to larger companies, offer, 5-figure bonuses every year, offer, blue plate health insurance there. I know that there are a lot of constraints for small businesses, but again, it's not all about the money or the benefits. Surveys consistently show that first and foremost, employees want to be treated with respect. They want to be engaged. They want to know that what they are doing matters. It's important. and they want a workplace that's generally a nice place to be. Those are the drivers of retention and high job satisfaction there. So think about, even things like, what does the workplace look like? Is everyone, are there little things that we could do to make this a better place to work? Whether it's cleaning it up, offering snacks, offering coffee, all those sort of things. If it's an auto shop, is it dim? Is it full of litter and clutter? And is this a place that people want to be at? What makes this, your workplace a place where people want to be? And everyone knows that they're valued and contributes to the success. So giving praise is very effective management too. Giving praise is very important there, and very specific praise too. So, I really, really appreciated how last week you stayed an extra 2 hours because we needed to get that, that marketing project completed and sent to the customer. And if you hadn't stayed those 2 hours, we would not have gotten it to the customer on Wednesday evening, and we had promised the customer we got it to them Wednesday evening. So I want to thank you so much for being willing to step up and stay and do that there. Or I want to thank you so much for calling Marge last week. I know she wasn't happy. You could sense that she wasn't happy from her email, and your call to her and reaching out to her by phone call made a huge difference. She ended up paying her bill, even though she said she wasn't going to pay it. And that was as a result of your personal touch and reaching out to Marge. So sharing specific examples of how employees just sort of went the extra mile and made a difference to the bottom line of the business is really, really important. Being specific is really important. Okay, let's see. Okay. So listen a little and talk a lot. So a lot of personal connections. And I said, just, take an interest in your employees there is very important there. Communication. I talked about giving specific feedback and praise. So rather than just, hey, good job there, but, good job on that report. I love that PowerPoint slide you put together. The graphics you put in it were great, was super engaging, way better than anything I could have done. Thank you so much. Giving specific praise and feedback is very important. Emphasizing success too. So if you got a new client and you know that it was as a result of that great marketing strategy that Carol put together, let Carol know, hey, this client renewed their contract with us, and not only that, but they've engaged us to do some additional ads next year, and I know that was as a result of what you did for the client over the last 6 months, so thank you so much. And then maybe a great thing to do too is at the end of the year, giving Carol a bonus and then sharing again. This bonus is related to, how you really stepped it up. And as a result, we upped the contract with this client there. And let me skip along here because we're coming up on time. Again, share your vision with employees. And this should be coming out too if you have an employee handbook. I didn't cover that with the onboarding process, but that can be very important. And you can have that in your employee handbook. If you have a new employee orientation, you can talk about it there then. That's a great time for, if there's the business owner is there and can come in and talk and share the vision with employees. Be out there talking with them, with the employees. Okay, so be creative. This is now moving on to the benefits end of things there, which again, I know if you're a small business can be challenging because you don't necessarily always have the resources that a larger company has. But the good thing is, yay, while other factors are certainly, important to employees, salary and wages are not always the top reasons that employees stay or go there. So surveying the current employees, what do they like? What don't they like? Extending training opportunities. This is something that surveys show a lot. As employees really like training because it means that their employer is making an investment in them. It means that, their employer cares about them, wants them to stay, or they wouldn't have spent, $1,200 and sent them to Baltimore for, overnight for this 2-day training class. So training opportunities, paid training opportunities, very important to employees there. Considering other benefit and different benefit alternatives. Don't be afraid to change things up. Performance based on incentives and advancement opportunities. And I have a slide on advancement there. That comes back as also something that's very important. Open communication, talking with your employees regularly, conducting sort of feedback, whether it's anonymous feedback, that can be good too, but also one-on-ones too with employees. What would you like to change? Is there anything you'd like to see differently? Anything you'd recommend for an improvement there? And again, sometimes employees aren't comfortable sharing those with the manager or the business owner, but some employees are and really welcome the opportunity to have these sort of open conversations with their employer. Training to retain, investment equals retention. So training opportunities, and it doesn't need to be, I mentioned out of town in Baltimore, it doesn't need to be out of town. It can be a few hours. It can be, think about ways that you can train and that maybe are lower dollar cost, but some cost is of value because again, it shows that you are investing in the employee. So I know some training is going to be, there might be required safety training or state training or something that's going to be online. We all hate online training and some of it is necessary, I know, but think about other value add training that you can offer employees and just show again your interest in them and your investment in them. Develop a career pyramid. And this, I know, and depending on your business might be more difficult too, but just thinking about ways. And then this is also something too that you can share with the employee during the interview, during the recruitment process too. So again, being proactive and thinking about how is it that I can keep somebody. Probably not everyone who comes in as a cashier making $10, $12 an hour is necessarily going to stay. And maybe that's okay if I have turnover. Maybe I don't care in my business. I always can find cashiers. But maybe you're in an area of the country where it's really challenging or a rural area there. So it really would pay off if I could, keep them and then, advance them up to maybe they're a supervisor, the shift supervisor or the gatehouse supervisor. And then maybe if the department manager, and then maybe the store manager there. So think about ways to develop a career pyramid in your business, and it can be done even in a small business too. Low cost rewards, and there's just so many suggestions, ideas, great ideas, really creative ideas that you can find just really out on, on Indeed, on HR websites too, birthday vacations, on the spot rewards, time off it's not of no cost to employers, but it is definitely a lower cost to the employer reward too. And birthday vacations, flex time is something that millennials and Gen Z in surveys show is very important. And we can't all offer in our business flex time or hybrid work arrangements, not realistic, depending on your, your business. I was talking about a restaurant before. I get that there, but can you, maybe have flex arrival time, flex departure time. Maybe you have employees that are really looking for full-time shifts and you have some employees that just want part-time shifts. Think about ways to be creative and work in sort of more flexible work arrangements. Flex work doesn't necessarily just mean work from home or hybrid work too, but what can you do? Do you have to have this rigid 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30? Are you willing to be flexible on when people come in and when people depart? Those are very important things for, as I said, for millennials and Gen Z workers. Volunteer time off, training, CPR training, get out of office free card, and the employee of the month. And the employee of the month is really a nice way to showcase your employees to your community if you do any sort of social media and within the business too. So if it's a dedicated parking spot, they get a day off, they get a gift card, and then share the news with the customers. Food is really a popular popular thing with employees, and I see that certainly in my own office there, and that's, again, a lower cost, not no cost to the employer, but a lower cost, and oftentimes it doesn't take much. I was listening to an HR podcast, and it was actually a dairy farmer who was speaking, and she said filling the early morning milking shift became so much easier after they started offering breakfast to the workers, full breakfast to the workers after the shift. So those who were willing to work that early morning shift now get free breakfast, and it just really upped the ante in the retention of the workers too. So Friday pizza, maybe it's not every Friday, but maybe one Friday a month, and it becomes casual Friday, or the pizza Friday then also is sort of like you get one Friday a month and you get to leave early, things like that. Just think about what it is that people want, and don't assume that everyone wants to trek to the baseball game with their family on a Sunday in July. So this is where it's very good to survey your employees and find out what exactly it is they want. Do they want free coffee, but is the coffee you're offering sort of the 7-Eleven coffee that's been sitting on the burner all day, or do they want K-cups? Is there something else you can do to make it a little bit fancier? Bottled waters, do they want, the fizzy waters there? Little things like that you can buy cases at Costco. Think about that to sort of up at a notch. Pocketbook incentives. I mentioned 35% of employees will look for a new job if they haven't received a bump in pay in the last year. Referral bonuses, tuition assistance can be very popular too if you've got employees that are looking to, whether it's tech school, community college, four-year college, or grad school, offering some tuition assistance. You can talk with your accountant about ways that you can do that. The 401k plan, upping the matching if you offer one. Is there a little bit more you can do to match? That sometimes keeps employees around too. Health insurance, we did have some questions about health insurance, and I know that's very challenging for small businesses. That has been the #1 issue on NFIB's problems and priorities survey now for, I think, almost 40 years, believe it or not. So health insurance is very challenging for small businesses. There's not a secret sauce. I will just say that shopping around can be very helpful. Using a broker, working with a licensed insurance broker, producer who can help you navigate options and compare plans there. And if you haven't done so, maybe explore stipends for employees to purchase their own insurance on the individual market, which would reduce potentially the employer's cost and the administrative burden. So there's individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements, which is a tax-free health benefit that allows employers to provide employees a monthly allowance to purchase their own health insurance and cover related expenses. So that might be something you will explore. And a way, if you can't afford to offer health insurance, full health insurance, but you can do something to help employees purchase their own health insurance. And then the PTO too. And the PTO, floating holidays, all that added on to the flex plan is all very important for employees in all generations, but we see that particularly with millennials and Generation Z too, who are really looking for a work-life balance. That's a very important item when considering a job too, and time off and flexible work arrangements. If your business can offer them, and I appreciate that not all can, but if you can, or you've got some wiggle room there to consider there. Being flexible, willing to change on the perks you offer is very important. Surveying employees and changing things up. And then keep in mind too that not all turnover is bad, where this is about recruitment and retention, but there is functional turnover. So whether it's a disruptive or poor performing employee, leaving the organization, that's called known as functional turnover, and that's not a bad thing. And that is why, going back to the being proactive, you've put your business out there, you've marketed your business so that it's known in the community. You've done all you can to make this the best place possible. You would want to come work for you, and others will want to come work for you, so that when you do have the turnover, there are applicants, maybe they're passive applicants, but that your announcement might catch their eye because there's something about it, they've heard about it, they've seen about it, they've shopped there, they've taken their car there, they've gotten a haircut there. their friend is a stylist there. They just know it. And yeah, I would consider going there because that seems like a pretty cool place to work too. And of course you have retirement too. So that is, that falls in neither category. And that can just be a really, can be a sad thing, but a nice thing for the employee when you've got a long-term employee who has left there. And that is something else to celebrate and share with the community too. We've had somebody who was here for 35 years. This is great. They worked here for 35 years. So that's a pretty cool thing. So I'm going to minimize my screen here. Stop sharing. And come back up. Are you there, Casey?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. And I don't know if we've got any questions or anything in the chat box. We've just got a couple here, which is good. Okay, so we have a question here. This is really a good one too. And this actually, I've heard this too. This is from Belinda, and I hope you don't mind that I'm using your first name there, but we have a lot of younger men working for us that don't value benefits, paid health, dental, short-term disability, et cetera, and just want the money in their pockets. We are trying to navigate this and trying to come up with different ideas to make everyone happy. Do you have any ideas? And that is a great question because we definitely have, and this is why, one of the reasons why, let me back up here. One of the reasons why NFIB is so adamant when it comes to the advocacy side of NFIB's house that legislatures don't mandate one-size-fits-all benefit packages because small businesses need flexibility. And we have heard this time and time again from businesses who say, we have primarily, a demographic that is just not looking for 3 weeks of paid time off. Or in Belinda's case, they're not looking for health care. They're not looking for dental care. That's just not a draw for them there. And that's where pay obviously is going to be important there too, but where I think thinking about things like the PTO and other sort of lower dollar things that you can offer employees is very, very helpful too. So, if you're only offering, 10 days of vacation time, maybe you offer 15 days, but to make sure that you don't have employees coming in and taking advantage of 15 days, maybe you do, you have to work here 90 days before you start accruing vacation. So there are other ways you can, sort of put guardrails on that too. But the first thing that comes to mind is think about ways that you can get creative with the training, the advancement, the engagement in the business there, making the employees, have a say in what they do too. And then also sort of the time, I'm going to call it the PTO. The PTO, do you have room to sort of offer a bit more PTO and reward employees that way there? So floating holidays so they can take more 3-day weekends. Maybe they don't want, I don't know, let's say, maybe they would really all like to have the day after Thanksgiving off. This is something, I know a lot more employers have gone to is offering that day after Thanksgiving or offering Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Things like that. So the PTO comes to mind there. Somebody just asked too, I guess, if this is going to be recorded. Yes, it absolutely will be. And I think, Casey, you probably shared the slides in advance too, right?
Yes, the link to the slides.
You did. I'm sorry.
There.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So lots, I know it's, again, challenging for small businesses to come up with non-monetary things, but keep in mind that the surveys show that non-monetary things are the things that often make the difference too. So people are not just jumping jobs because of higher pay. That might be one of the reasons, but that is not the key driver there. And that's good news for small businesses who do have the ability, I think, to be more creative, more flexible too, because, you can, when you only have 5 employees, I think you have a little bit more wiggle room to maybe, offer a flexible arrangement and allow, one individual to start later or come in later, or just a little bit more flexibility to offer those flexible work arrangements and really to become the employer of choice in your community. So thank you everyone who has joined us today. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your ongoing support of NFIB's webinar series. I hope you will be able to join us again in October for Tim Coon's Ask the Attorney. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you all for attending. That concludes our presentation. Have a great day.